Today, we're looking at a red ink by Bookbingers, the Red Spitting Cobra. I'm just so happy they didn't name it after the team from Dodgeball, the Purple Spitting Cobras. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. And if you like videos like that, I would invite you to subscribe. You can also follow me on Instagram, and there's timestamps down below so that if you are in a hurry, you can skip around. But if you got the time, I'd appreciate you checking out the entire video. In order to make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into this Sailor, my first pen with a medium fine nib. I wrote with it for a day and used it to take the notes for this video. I standardized my first writing sample by using Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper on all of the tests that I do. I do use other papers, and some of those will show up later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, so it came in a vial like this. And to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is a little bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, spots of shading, just little spots of it. Very minor, but it is kind of there. 5 seconds to dry. Medium is a little bit lighter than the extra fine. With no feather spread, halo sheen, again, some spots of shading that are occurring. 9 seconds to dry. The scrubby for the extra fine shows a little color variation. We do get a little. The medium, far left to far right, does show some, and we do get some. Tomoe River. No bleeding, normal Tomoe River ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 9 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, and 15 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both shows no color variation, and we didn't get any in the writing. And Rhodia, with no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. The extra fine is a little bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen. We do get spots of shading throughout some of this writing here. 6 seconds to dry. Medium is about the same tone as the extra fine. With no feather spread, halo sheen, we do still get spots of shading throughout some of this writing, and 9 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby of the extra fine shows more color variation left to right than the medium does. However, both of them give it in the writing. I agree with Vita. I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see this is a much more complex ink than it would initially seem, which is the reason that we get some shading here. Now it starts off with a nice pink and it works its way up into a very light red. However, across the very top of it, look at the very top of that red, and you see a very light turquoise color showing up, and it's that's giving us the shading. It's actually the turquoise part that's giving us the most shade here. Now the one on the right I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water, and the pink is forming quite a bit more of a line on the bottom. It's not traveling as far up, but when it's traveling up it's also being darker, so it's bonding as it's moving. Now, the same thing is happening with the red that's there. It's very much formed in. It's darker because it's bonding as it's moving. And the turquoise at the top is not as stand out, but you certainly can still see it. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on a page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, I would not use this in a note-taking situation if I wanted to be able to go back and highlight, because that lowercase h is blown out and I don't risk my notes. Water is reactivating and lifting, but it's leaving a lot of the pink that we saw in the chromatography still on the paper. Now, while it's still leaving the pink on the paper, it left the pink in the converter, which was odd for me, but it did. Pen flush seems to be doing just about the same as water did on paper. Now in the pen, I had to run the pen flush through that pen about twice. After I ran it through twice, I saw no sign of that pink being left behind, and I just washed it out with water and it was over. So while pen flush doesn't seem to be doing much more on paper, it did help when it came to the pen. 1/3 bleach solution, which I didn't need and you're not going to need, completely removes it from the paper. I test the viscosity or flow using a tilt test, which I'm going to link the video showing how I do that. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Bookbingers Red Spitting Cobra has a viscosity of 3.04, making it a dry ink. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. I average all 6 of those numbers. Now, for the inks I've tested, I found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Bookbingers Red Spitting Cobra has an average dry time of 9 seconds, making it a fast drying ink. Instead of finding inks that look like Bookbingers Red Spitting Cobra, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I went for a nice blue-black, and I chose Diamine Eclipse. The second writing sample is done on Levenger, Strathmore Writing, and Limone paper. Here we're looking at Levenger paper. Now we get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, and 4 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, and 6 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby of the extra fine shows a tiny bit of color variation, although we didn't get it. The medium shows none, and we got none. Strathmore Writing paper with no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 3 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, and 4 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby of the extra fine shows color variation, but we didn't get it. The medium shows none, and we got none. And last up is Limone paper with no bleeding, no ghosting, which is fantastic because this paper, I do not know it as doing great with a lot of inks. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is a bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 4 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the extra fine, just a tad darker than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 6 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both shows no color variation, and we didn't get any. That is all that I have for the writing sample. So what do I think of Bookbingers Red Spitting Cobra? I think it's a very solid performing, well-behaved ink. It does offer some shading from time to time, and you can even get some tone variation depending on the pen you choose to put it into. It is still not the red for me. Reds are incredibly difficult despite the red shirt. So what nib and pen are going to give the best writing experience with this ink? I found a bright, vivid red could be found by using a very wet pen, preferably a medium or fine. If you've made it this far and you've enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I'm going to remind you to subscribe. Thanks for watching.